And thank you for joining us for the RIZE Massachusetts Know Your Rights in Recovery webinar and Toolkit release. Before we get started, I have a few announcements. All participants will be on mute throughout the program. Questions can be directed to the moderator by using the Q&A option on the toolbar, and please feel free to send your questions throughout. The webinar is also being recorded. We are live tweeting the event. Please join us in the conversation. Our handle is @RIZEMass, and our hashtag is #0stigma0deaths. Finally, you'll receive a survey after the event, and I hope you'll take a minute to fill it out to help us plan future programs. On our agenda for the next hour is to hear from our Attorney General, Maura Healey, participate in a virtual discussion with some folks who know just how hard it can be to access services, and get a demonstration of the toolkit from our partners at Health Resources in Action. I'm so pleased to see that we had attendees register from all over the state, some of you new to RIZE, so a bit of background. Launched in 2017, RIZE is an independent nonprofit foundation created to end the overdose epidemic. And if that's going to happen anywhere, it's right here in Massachusetts. We're made up of a constantly growing group of providers, payers, unions, advocates, and people with lived experience. They may not always see eye to eye on issues, but they're standing shoulder to shoulder on this one. Together, we're driven by the concept of commonwealth, and with that, a sense of obligation to do all that we can to improve the lives of people with addiction and those who love them. One of our strategies at RIZE to end the opioid crisis is to serve as a neutral convener, bring people together, share learning, support exploration, enable change, and that's our goal for today. An example of this work is our Together in Recovery initiative. Launched in 2019, Together in Recovery is designed to foster an accessible, integrated treatment and recovery network in Massachusetts that champions evidence-based approaches, supports multiple pathways to recovery, and puts people in charge of their treatment choices. After conducting convenings all across the state, it was very clear that finding accessible, accurate information about treatment and recovery supports was a challenge. And an even bigger challenge was finding information about the rights and protections for people with opioid use disorder. And that's why we decided to produce the Know Your Rights Toolkit. Together in Recovery is led by an advisory committee of diverse influencers, and they helped us design the toolkit and provided subject matter expertise on the content. In addition, we had great partners, as always, in the state, BSAS, Mass Health, and the AG's office. And I'd especially like to thank Marianne Frangulis from MOAR, whose advice was critical to the success of this resource, and of course, the team from Health Resources in Action who made it happen. And finally, I'd like to recognize Abby Hebert and my colleagues at RIZE who kept it all going. If we were in person, I'd ask you all to stand, but I hope a virtual round of applause will do for today. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our Attorney General, the Chief Lawyer and Law Enforcement Officer of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but a better way to describe her is the people's lawyer. General Healey has earned a reputation for taking on tough issues: corruption, gaming, predatory lenders, Donald Trump. But more importantly, she made a commitment to the families who have lost loved ones to overdose and promised she would get answers, and did she ever? She's filed numerous lawsuits against opioid makers and distributors and is one of the most outspoken and relentless attorney generals in the United States on this issue. She recently rejected the Purdue Pharma settlement, not only because it wasn't enough money, but because it didn't provide what our families deserve: transparency and accountability. In addition, she's long been an advocate for prevention, providing substance use prevention education to middle school students by empowering them to make the right decisions, promote health and wellness, and lead change in their schools and community. Most recently, her office awarded $1.5 million in grants to promote equity in the treatment of opioid use disorder. On behalf of all of us, thank you, General Healey, for all that you and your team do each and every day, and for your continued support of this critical public health issue. We're lucky to have you. General?
Hey, well, good morning. It's great to see you. I want to thank you, Julie. I want to thank everyone at the RIZE team. You know, I remember that first meeting in the ballroom just a few years ago when RIZE was first starting and being announced. And it's incredible, Julie, to see how things have grown and what has been accomplished on this, the celebration of the 4th anniversary. When I spoke at that event years ago, I spoke about the urgency of the opioid epidemic, and I shared my commitment and my office's commitment to addressing this public health crisis. I think on that day, there were many folks on my team who were in attendance that day. I can't tell you, how many people from our office have been working on various aspects of this over the last really 6 years. We sent our first subpoena to Purdue and the Sacklers, I think, early on in March of 2015, just after I started. But I want you all to know that I made that representation, and we've got a lot of focus in the office on this across all realms. I want to thank Catherine Madden, who's on today, who does so much to work and liaise with our families, in addition to the lawyers and staff across so many different divisions that are working on this matter. I think that even on that day, we may not have anticipated the challenge of combating an epidemic under the kind of circumstances that we faced with an epidemic in the middle of a pandemic. And it's why your mission is so important and more critical than ever. I, understand how COVID has taken much of the headlines and the news, and that's totally understandable. I also know, though, that the number of opioid overdoses has only increased, and not surprising given the stigma, given the anxiety and the stress and the economic situations, the difficulties around navigating treatment in COVID. We understand that, but that's why I'm so grateful that you're helping to once again bring focus and lift a focus on this. Your mission too, your message and your mission around zero stigma, zero overdoses is so, so important. And to that end, I am really delighted to be able to be here today to celebrate your development of the Know Your Rights in Recovery Toolkit, which is a help in that work, because it's about helping people better access resources, helping our families, better access resources so that they can help their loved ones build successful paths to treatment and true recovery. I hear and continue to hear all the time from families about the very real challenge of navigating treatment and recovery systems. I know that for individuals who suffer from opioid use disorder and for their families in crisis, it's not always clear how or where to go to get help. And COVID has only exacerbated this. And so this surge that we're seeing, in this moment where today another 5 people will still die, we need more resources. And, it shouldn't be easier to text a drug dealer than it is to get help. It's a pattern that has persisted for far too long. And it's why we need to ensure people struggling have access to really person-centered and culturally responsive care that they need. We need to empower people who suffer from substance use disorder. We need to help them and help those who love and care for them to access the tools, the resources, and the support they need to recover. Give families real actionable advice. And fundamentally, this is about giving people hope. Because addiction is so, so hard and takes such a toll. And we need to constantly give people hope. Those who are, afflicted with the disease and also those around them. And the Know Your Rights in Recovery Toolkit is going to help build the foundation that we need as we go forward. It's going to help people seeking services and seeking support networks. It's also going to be a resource to educate, those who may be on the front lines providing some of those services. And so, we want to celebrate this important, concrete step forward in promoting health equity for all, especially for this vulnerable population. And I really appreciate it because it is putting the person who is struggling with addiction back at the center of the conversation about their care. And so we're going to continue to do the work in the office, holding those accountable who need to be held accountable, including drug manufacturers and distributors. We're going to work on addressing the barriers to accessing treatment and sustained recovery. And we're going to continue to partner with you. I'm so proud of the work that we've been able to do with RIZE, and really am grateful for all who've worked over the last 4 years to do so much. And yeah, there's a lot of work to do ahead, but I know that together we can get this done. So thank you. Now in this time, spring, we're coming through this terrible, terrible period of this pandemic. I really appreciate RIZE bringing the focus back on the opioid epidemic and the need to do all that we can for those who are suffering and for their families. And this toolkit is going to help do just that. So thank you, Julie and the team.
Thank you so much for being with us. And I return the thanks to you and your team and all the time and energy they put into the toolkit, making sure that we had the facts right and that the information was accessible. And we are equally proud to call you our partner and look forward to doing much more work together. So thank you again, General.
All right, terrific, terrific. We'll be in touch. Thanks, team.
Great, thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Daryl Mcgraw, our moderator for the panel discussion. Daryl has been part of Together in Recovery since the beginning, and it has been a true pleasure and honor to work with him. Officially, he is a recovery specialist at C4 Innovations and the founder and president of Formerly Inc. But he's also a great champion for people with addiction, and especially those with justice system involvement upon their release. I noticed something on his bio when I was looking at it this morning, and it notes that he wants us to move away from the status quo toward something more meaningful. And I believe that's where he's going to lead us to get today during this conversation. He's also going to be joined by Lena Abdallah, from the Greater Boston Collegiate Recovery, and Timothy Jean from SAMHSA. Daryl?
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much. Thank you. Man, I'm excited to be here. And you guys got the general in the building too, man. I'm super excited to get this conversation going with Tim and Lena. I just want to thank you once again for the work that RIZE is doing as a person with lived experience, which what that means to me that I haven't used a substance since May 7, 2007. So being in recovery and then being here and being a part of the conversation and just being at the table, because, that's what we, as people, impacted people, man, and being here, a part of the table, at the table is such an honor and a privilege. So with that being said, I want to just invite Tim and Lena. Let's get this conversation going. Tim, you want to, we're going to introduce ourselves, but my mother could be watching, so I have to say ladies first. Let me just say ladies first, and then Lena, if you want to introduce yourself, and then bring Tim right in, and then let's get this conversation going.
Hi, everybody. My name's Lena, and I am a person in long-term recovery. What that means to me is I haven't used drugs or alcohol since August of 2014. It means I get to live a fulfilling life today. I'm here with Greater Boston Collegiate Recovery, and just excited to be here. So.
Welcome. And Tim, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Daryl. First off, I want to thank the Attorney General for, some awesome remarks and, the important message, and, the RIZE team and Julie for bringing us all together and, unveiling the toolkit. It's going to be a great resource for people in recovery to access. Hi, everybody. My name is Tim Jean, and I am a person in long-term recovery from a substance use disorder. What that means to me is I haven't had drugs or alcohol since November 9, 2014. And I currently work for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA. I serve as the public health fellow for the New England regional office, and we're located here in Boston.
Cool. Thank you, Tim. Thank you. So everybody, panelists and attendees, don't let the tide fool you. I like informal conversations. I like this to be informal and flowing. So the Q&A box is right there if you have questions for our panelists, for us to talk about, because this toolbox is serious. This is important. This is a big deal. This is huge for families and impacted people. You know, I don't know about you guys, but I wish there was a toolbox when I was going through my process, you know, because I know my parents and my mom couldn't figure it out. And I wanted to know, everybody wanted to know why, and, you know, how can we help? How can we be involved? So I'm super excited about this toolbox. Anybody could just chime into the Q&A box if you have questions or whatever. But we're going to start with you, Tim, a quick question in reference to what are the biggest barriers people face when trying to access treatment from substance use disorder? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think there's a few, you know, barriers to the top of my list. I think, you know, stigma certainly is one of the bigger ones that I've noticed. And, you know, whether it's somebody's first time or, you know, somebody that's been either through the treatment system various times, I don't think, you know, stigma really goes away. I've only had to navigate the treatment system once, but, you know, while I was in my active addiction, I knew I needed to seek treatment, and I knew I had a problem. There's a lot of fear and anxiety that I went through, and I thought, you know, I was going to be judged and viewed by my family members, friends, community members, teachers, and it really just kept me out in active addiction for a long time.
Right.
Thing I see a lot too is regarding stigma is that, you know, what types of treatments someone tries to seek, whether it's short-term, extended care in treatment, intensive out treatment programs, harm reduction. I think the real goal is that people seek the care they need, and, you know, that they get the help that they ultimately need to seek.
Right.
I also want to touch on another thing, is that, you know, another barrier that I often see is that people that either have addiction or are seeking treatment often are let alone to diagnose their own SUD. We shouldn't, you know, whether you're struggling with drugs or alcohol, we shouldn't have to seek out medical care or treatment options on our own, or even self-diagnose, right? We need to get to a place where doctors and PCPs can actually properly screen these along with mental health comorbidities. So I think it's really important, just like physical health care, right, that a doctor guides us through the process, and, you know, whether they give us a treatment regimen or, you know, medication, the doctor is right by our side the whole time. So I think that's something that's missing in the recovery space.
Man, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Lena. We about to get into this, but the heat is cranking up, man. They're cranking up the quick Q&A. They're not playing no games right now. One of the questions, Matt says, why is SAMHSA still uses the word abuse and stigmatizing? Let's think about that. I mean, because here, you know, SAMHSA is like, you know, the mothership, right? But yet still the word abuse. So we as a community, because I believe this is a community, need to be addressing that and making sure, because language matters, right? Lena, what you want to chime in on that? And as well as, you know, think about it, Tim, we're going to jump right to Lena and see what she's thinking.
To answer that question?
If you choose, or I got one for you, we can keep it going.
I think it is very important. I think language is very important, and I think that a lot, like, so for example, with the drug courts are now changing their name to recovery court to promote recovery, and I think over time, all of the different organizations and communities, I think that they will be. I don't know if Tim.
Tim, you wanna chime in on that? And Lena, I'm gonna come back to you because I got a question for you.
Yeah, was it Matt that asked the question?
The question, just, you know, we just really quickly,
okay.
In the box, it was about the word abuse being used by SAMHSA, right? Because if SAMHSA using it, then other people, organizations think it's acceptable. So we got to make sure that this language is changed from the top to the bottom, you know?
Excellent. Thanks for that question. First off, I don't know the reason why But language does matter, and it's definitely something that people in this space have been talking about for years. It's in, you know, SAMHSA's been around for decades. The acronym hasn't changed. Hopefully we can change that, you know, through policy, through discussions like this, through advocacy, and just people trying to really elevate the conversation that words do matter. And, you know, in the recovery space in the last decade or so, we've really changed how we talk about the person or the, you know, people in recovery with with person first language. So that's a real benefit to the recovery community in the last decade or so. And yeah, whoever asked that question, I think it's Matt, he's right. We do need to have a conversation around this, and this needs to be changed at the federal level for sure.
No doubt. I think Matt for bringing that that heat to already right off the top. And we got the general in the building, so you know we got some power on our team. hey, Lena, let's talk about what do you think the criminal? This is something passionate. Those who know me know that I'm passionate about this population. What do you think the criminal legal system can do to better help people seeking recovery? This is a great question. What you thinking?
I'm actually also passionate about this population. I am a recovery court graduate myself. So just from my own experience, knowing if you're in the system and you have a team working for your best interest and supporting you in treatment, it changes your whole experience versus being maybe in prison and not having anyone help you. So I would say that we should be looking at the criminal legal system as a resource. Individuals with substance use or co-occurring disorders. It shouldn't be a barrier. Proper screening should be in place to identify those in need courts upon, so that they're ready upon release or entry into probation. The screening should indicate not only the need for support or identifying whether someone has substance use disorder, but it all should be indicating the level of care needed as well, so those referrals can be made. And those referrals would look something like re-entry programs, residential programs, maybe IOP, maybe MA recovery coaches.
No, I really appreciate that answer, Lena. You know, I always say that we're not responsible for how a person goes into prison or jail, but how they come out, we should be concerned with, you know? And speaking of resources, Tim, let me shoot this one at you. What resources do you wish you had about, had to known about in the beginning of your recovery process?
Excellent, thank you. I think, you know, with the innovation of apps and treatment locators now, and they're so readily available for people trying to access treatment and resources. You know, when I first entered recovery, and I'm sure yourself, Daryl and Lena, you know, I kind of had to fend for my own. I remember being in a car the day of, you know, calling dozens of treatment options and kind of just going wherever there was an open bed. I didn't really know anything about where I was going. I was kind of just, you know, open to anything that came my way. At the time when I entered recovery or, you know, went to treatment, it was so competitive and there were so many people trying to access treatment at the time that just beds weren't available. I wish that, you know, I would be able to educate myself a little better. And now with today's resources and tools and on like the toolkit, right? The RIZE is implementing, just stuff like being able to educate ourselves is just so important. There's just so many options, whether you, like I said earlier, whether you need inpatient, outpatient, or even harm reduction services to, you know, kind of get you by until you're ready to enter treatment, or if at all, right? So I think the overarching point is that I just wish there was, or I had those resources to educate myself at the time. Maybe they were there, you know, but I didn't utilize them. So
no, I appreciate that. This chat box is going crazy. So Lisa has a quick question for us, right? And either one of you guys can answer it. How do folks in recovery address and navigate the risks associated with the medical providers prescribing pain medications for your potential health conditions? for your other potential health conditions? My bad. Anybody want to take that?
Like while we're in recovery?
Yeah, it looks like, yep. And Lisa can speak more to that. To navigate the risks associated with medical providers prescribing pain medications for your other potential health conditions. So we see that a lot, right? We see people in recovery who like have an issue, and sometimes you gotta, I mean, not to answer, but you guys, we hear people like in the rooms, they say, listen, I had to tell the doctor I can't take that or what have you. And what do you guys, what has been your guys' experience in reference to that? What are you thinking?
I can go and answer this question. I mean, yeah, I think that's the best course of action, right? I think you need to take responsibility for yourself and say that, either disclose it to the doctor or just find a way to say that you can't have this pain medication. For me, I have a sponsor in my recovery, and if I ever feel uneasy about a situation, I can always lean on that person. And I think to have these supports in recovery is at least for me, it's like mandatory, right? I need that as a safeguard. But I've encountered this, in the hospitals. I've broken bones in recovery, and you just have to take or at least I had to take responsibility and just be upfront with the doctor. I have no shame in saying I'm a person in recovery from a substance use disorder, and I just can't take that pain medication.
Right. And that's when, Lena, talk to me, because, some people might be in early recovery and might not be in that space. Right. So how do we help them individuals too? Thanks, Tim.
I have to say that I think that this actually brings up a really important need. I think we're headed in the right direction, and there's a lot of resources and education out there, but I think that this highlights the piece that a lot of the medical providers still don't have the education on treating our population, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. I'm going to try to grab one more question before we throw to Kelly, and she's going to tell us, but really quickly, what is a piece of advice you can give people in recovery who are struggling to advocate for themselves in various systems? So they're advocating for themselves. What piece of advice are we giving our people, that are going through the process, whether they're early or been in recovery? What can we give? Because they're advocating for themselves. Sometimes we all know what it's like to advocate for ourselves, So what piece of advice would you give somebody either coming out or trying to, get something done for themselves? Talk to me.
Lena, do you want this one, or?
I think, should we both answer it?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go. We need everything we can get, because then we're going to go to the toolbox. Let's go.
I would say that you don't have to do this alone. There are so many resources out there. You can start with RIZE. You can reach out to MOAR. And I would tell the person how they are the most, it's an amazing thing to be in recovery, and there's so much beauty around it. Just really encourage them, and then share that I'm a person in recovery, and hopefully open that door for them to,
Yeah.
Right. That's huge. That's huge. What you got, Tim?
I've done this to several people, and I kind of think the best way to do it is just to tell them, forget about all the noise around you. There's so much noise for people initially trying to access recovery, right? Whether it's people that you're using with or people that you've been in recovery, everybody wants to point you in the best direction. They're in active recovery for a reason. Should I be taking the advice for people that I'm currently using with? Probably not, right? And I think it's really important to just rip the Band-Aid off and kind of have these tough conversations with somebody close to you in recovery, because everybody has been affected by somebody with, a substance use disorder or mental health comorbidity, right? Everybody knows somebody, whether they think they do or not. And I think if you can confide in somebody and just rip that Band-Aid off, you'll have somebody at your side throughout your whole recovery. Trust me. I have plenty of people, and it just takes a little courage to rip that Band-Aid off and just have those conversations.
Right, man. Listen, man, I love being with family, man. I love when we're all talking the same language. I love it. And I love it when people get to see us have these conversations. We could have went all day, but we got Kelly coming up. But one of the things that I want to say, man, is if nothing else, when you meet a person who identifies in recovery, respect where they've been, right? Respect where that person has been, because that means that not only have they been through something, but here they are today representing recovery. And you don't have to say what you are in recovery from. You can just say that you're in recovery, and that means that you are on this journey. And people, I always say that people are in recovery from everything. Everybody's in recovery from something. But when you hear someone say that they're in recovery, man, show them the love, because that means not only have they been through something like my people here, but they are willing to, be there and help other people, guiding them through that darkness to the light. And with that, I'm gonna throw to Kelly. Kelly, let's show us this light, show us this toolbox. Man, Tim, Lena, thank you so much. And before we go, I just want to say there was a couple of questions that weren't answered in the Q&A. So if you guys want to take them and answer them, type the answers to them. I don't want to leave anybody out. Kelly, how you doing? Let's go to the toolbox.
Thank you, Daryl. Feeling great. I love the energy that you all brought, and just really laid a great foundation for what we're going to go through for why this toolkit came to be and how folks can use it to the best of its ability. So my name's Kelly Dankert. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a training associate with Health Resources in Action. Health Resources in Action worked with RIZE Massachusetts to bring this toolkit to life through a lot of research, a lot of stakeholder interview, a lot of analysis and writing. So we really appreciate you all being here today as this toolkit comes into being. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a couple of quick slides, and then I'll take you through the RIZE website to show how folks can navigate the toolkit and just where they can find it, period. Okay, so let me know if everyone can see my screen. Great, seeing a couple of nods. So what the toolkit, first of all, I'll just go over broadly who the toolkit is for and how it came to be. So like Tim and Lena said, recovery can feel daunting sometimes. I've heard before that the opposite of addiction is connection. And so we really wanted this toolkit to be that connecting piece for folks who are seeking treatment, for folks who are in recovery, and for their loved ones, their family members, providers, and any allies in their corner. So this toolkit outlines the rights people hold through all stages of recovery and through all of life's milestones. So as folks are seeking treatment, as they're looking for housing, as they're looking for jobs, as they're maybe leaving incarceration and reentering the community and pursuing education. So this toolkit defines what each of those milestones might look like, what situations might occur where discrimination and stigma might come up, but more importantly, how to advocate for yourself and exercise the rights that you hold. Like Tim and Lena said, it can feel really hard to recognize discrimination, but can feel even more difficult to advocate for yourself. So we wanted to consolidate a lot of resources out there and put them all in one place. So as we talk about this toolkit, as for its features, it's a scrolling website that really brings together all of this information in one place, which is huge. All this information exists somewhere, but in about 800 different places, and often lost in pages upon pages of lots of jargon and medical jargon. So here it's all in one place. It's really easy to navigate, where you can jump between sections back and forth. It has tons of resources that allow you to go to third-party websites in a new tab, so you can go back to the toolkit and not lose your place. But I think for me, one of the best highlights too is this plugin that helps users easily access the Massachusetts Substance Use Helpline if additional assistance is needed. There's a lot of information in this toolkit. If you find something and you have a question about what is medication for opioid use disorder, what is the best type for me, you can talk to a real live person by calling the helpline. You can chat with someone. They have the ability to translate to a ton of different languages. And the people on the other side of the phone are real life people, often with lived experience and in recovery themselves. So again, this toolkit is not just about connecting resources together, but connecting you to help and connecting you to each other and finding communities and ways to help you empower yourself to advocate for yourself and others too. So for who this audience is intended for, we're mainly focusing on people in treatment and recovery, but also their families, their friends, advocates, allies, providers, and caseworkers. It's really important to all of us at HRiA, Health Resources in Action, and RIZE, that the programs and the services and tools that serve these people have their active voice in the process. So throughout every step of research, development, user testing, we made sure that we talk to people in treatment, in recovery, providers, folks with the Attorney General's office, and get their feedback to make sure that we're getting the information that they want to see in ways that they want to see it too. So now that I laid the foundation and got you all excited, I'm going to stop sharing and take you to the website so you can know where to find this great resource. So what you're looking at, hopefully on my screen, please wave your arms if you are not seeing this, is the RIZE website. You can find the toolkit in 3 different places. So this is the homepage. You can scroll down and the toolkit lives right here, but you can also go under what we fund, and it lives in Together in Recovery. And lastly, it also lives under resources too. So you'll see here, Your Rights in Recovery is at the top of the list, and the Spanish version of the toolkit is right below it. So when we click here and we go into the toolkit, you'll see the landing page. So this landing page right here really just provides that grounding that I just provided for you. But one thing I really do want to elevate here is this equity statement that RIZE really recognizes the trauma, inequities, and violence that structural racism has caused for BIPOC communities and people in long-term recovery or any type of recovery. There are lots of barriers that exist to getting the help that folks want, and this toolkit recognizes those, tries to highlight that, and also work to create the foundation so that folks are able to get that treatment without those barriers and create that world where discrimination associated with drug use is over. So to go through each of the sections broadly, there's this navigation bar on the left-hand side, and these are all the sections that you can find more information on, rights and advocacy, and resources. So for example, if I go to treatment and recovery pathways, you'll see here that broad statement that there's no right way to recover. Again, your recovery is your choice and you are the driver in that journey. And this toolkit really does aim to help build that and empower folks to choose what works for them by not only giving them the knowledge, but also the rights that they hold so they can actively exercise their rights in all areas. So here under clinical pathways, for example, what I can do, I can open this and it takes me to all different types of services for clinical pathways for opioid use disorder. Each section is set up the same way. So there's medication for opioid use disorder, and it provides a general description of the services. But then if you keep scrolling, it provides rights and advocacy tips, and each section is set up in the same way. So for example, it's illegal to discriminate against people because they're receiving MOUD. And it's also important to us to point out different situations where folks might feel like they're being discriminated against, because again, you can feel when you're being discriminated against, but if you don't have that language for it, it can be hard to take that next step to see who's in your corner and what can you do about it. So in each section, we lay out some different scenarios that might occur, but more importantly, who is in your corner, because you are not alone and that there are people here to advocate for you along with you advocating for yourself. So you have the Bureau of Substance Addiction Services, the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office, Civil Rights Division, and a lot of other organizations who are in your corner to help advocate for you. And then if you keep scrolling down, there are tons of resources that take you to a different website, resources for folks in treatment and recovery, but also for family and loved ones too. So you can collapse these accordions too, and then say, I am a person who is leaving incarceration, looking for employment. I'm able to jump to legal and justice system resources and ask myself, okay, if I'm leaving incarceration and re-entering, maybe I already navigated the court system and I don't need that, but I want to figure out what resources I have when I'm reentering. So I can go here and it breaks down how I can work with my parole officer if I have one, how I can work with my reentry coordinator and figure out what are the next steps, and also what are some programs that might help me. If I'm looking for employment, I might be worried about my query and want to know what information is out there for when I can seal it. All that lives here. I can go and find more resources and all of that. So I noticed in the chat box and the question box, some people had some questions about what are resources for employers maybe. So again, this isn't just for folks in treatment and recovery, it's for anyone who is an advocate or an ally. And I think we all are advocates and allies. So if I'm a supervisor working with someone who might be in long-term recovery, or just a supervisor period who's interested in what recovery-friendly workplaces might look like, I want to go to recovery and employment and think, how can I change my work policies to better fit what a recovery-friendly workplace might be? So here I could figure out, okay, like I can provide my employees with job restructuring, flex time for counseling and doctor's appointment. Like if my supervisee is wanting to meet their methadone appointments, they can say, hey, I really want to work from 10 to 6 instead of 9 to 5 so I can make my appointment. And state and federal law protects that. That was something I didn't know when I was researching this toolkit. So it's really great to have all this information in one place. And with new Massachusetts laws too, around the Paid Family and Medical Leave Act, you should and can feel empowered to leave work to seek residential recovery, and your job is still protected because that is under state and federal law. And again, this is something too that if I'm in treatment and recovery and I want to find the information, that's great information for me too. But also this is great information for anyone who is at a job in any position of power or manages other folks, because you never know what resources your team might need. And again, it provides a lot of resources for employment, both for employers and employees and all of that. So I'll walk you through one more example, but I know I have about 2 more minutes. So if anyone else has any burning identity or question that they want me to walk them through the toolkit, feel free to drop that in the question box. But I think another thing that is great that you can do in this toolkit is that you can print and copy the link to any section. So say I'm a parent and my child has been in and out of treatment for the past couple of years and they're ready to go to college, but they really want to make sure that their college supports their recovery, whatever that might look like. I might want to go here, look at, okay, what information is under recovery and education. I can find too information about eligibility around financial aid if he happened to be arrested on drug-related charges. I can find information about what universities have sober living, if that's what he's interested in. And I can say, oh my God, this information is great. I'm going to copy this and email it to him, or print the section and maybe slip it under his door or whatever is needed. And again, if I'm ever navigating this and I feel really overwhelmed, I'm able to just click right here and talk to someone on the helpline to figure out how I can actually access more information or just get some advice too. And what's great is that this toolkit also exists in Spanish that you can toggle back and forth between by clicking this button at the top. And it's entirely in Spanish. And whenever there is a resource that is from the Massachusetts Substance Use Helpline, it will take you to a page that is also in Spanish too. So not only is the content in Spanish, but the resources are as well. So for example, if I wanted to learn more about MOUD in Spanish, I can go to the helpline and here it is. So with that, I think my time might be up. So I'll pass it back to Daryl to facilitate any question and answer. But again, thank you all for being here and learning about this resource. Please share widely. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Kelly. Now, I gotta be honest, right? I've heard this, I heard about this toolkit many times, and I've been in different rooms, and every time I hear about it, my mind is just like, bah, like, you know, so blown, and it's just such a resource. like, you know, so many people, like, you know, being a person with family members, being an impacted person myself, many times people are saying they just don't know. But to be able to actually go to it and be able to click on these links and stuff, I'm just super impressed and super, you know, and everything. You did a great job explaining it. I was writing notes. I was like, man, this is the thing, man. You know, because sometimes, you know, I think Tim and Lena could chime in as well. You know, it's also the misinformation. There's so many myths. There's so many people telling you what doesn't exist. Now you've given us a toolkit that can say that's not true. You can go to college. You can do this. You can do that. So therefore, you actually dispel the myths as well. Man, I really appreciate that. And then I think I'm fielding some questions here from the Q&A here. It says, what happens if, and anybody that's here can answer this. What happens if when employers are not heeding the federal regs around flexing schedules to accommodate methadone appointments? Oh, this is a good one. This is a good one. I like it. Or other recovery-related issues. What is the recourse? Who wants to grab that? Kelly, can we talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, under the American Act for Disabilities, that is something that the workforce does have to. And so the Attorney General's office has a civil rights division that is able to elevate all of these complaints to the powers that be, who can help keep those employers accountable. Because again, right is protected by both state and federal law.
Right. Another question real quick is, I'm wondering if there's anything on RIZE for lawyers who are looking to refer their clients to something to help them rather than incarceration, or, I mean, I need that. That's a good lawyer right there. If that's a lawyer question, that's a great, incarceration or other punishments. So a referral system to options, because a lot of times courts are always asking for, they don't want to lock somebody up, but sometimes those are the only options. So we're talking options. Is there any other options, or, you know, anybody, Tim, anybody, or just because this sounds like a really great resource that could be used, but are you guys familiar with other options other than a referral source that attorneys can use? Lena or Tim? Or Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, it's not in my wheelhouse, but you know, in Massachusetts we do, and in New England we do have the recovery court system, and you know, there's a board of the New England Association of Recovery Courts, and they, you know, that's basically what they do, is they manage the recovery court system and best practices and push policy. So we have that in New England. I don't know specifically of options that, you know, that would be used to not put somebody in jail, but obviously there's recovery supports in housing and programs that are available to the general public. I don't know I haven't been through that system per se, but I know that, you know, that those options are available and readily used throughout the recovery courts. Lena might be able to touch a little bit more about this, knowing more about the recovery courts. Not to throw you under the bus, Lena, but
this is her thing. Come on, Lena.
I mean,
Yeah.
recovery court, you have to be accepted into recovery court. So then the question is, what happens to those who aren't part of recovery court? So I am a program manager at a women's program, and we do have a lot of attorneys and probation officers outside of recovery court that do refer women to our program. So they do exist. There's just not like a button that you could click to find them. But I think probably advocate for themselves, hopefully too, and hopefully the future will continue to change in the greater good of the recovery world.
Yeah, so what I'm gathering is maybe upon a hearing, instead of like in front of a judge, instead of going to jail, a lawyer would advocate to put that, you know, person in the recovery court program.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Good. Thank you both for the answering that, and that's great. And it might be another checkbox that we think about, like, how do we even enhance that service a little better? I know Matt asked a question about, is it true if you have drug charges, you're not eligible for financial aid? I can answer that one. That's not true. I went to college with drug charges, had them. I think there is a question about sales and different. I know in our state, in Connecticut, where I'm from, there is a question about sales, but I've seen many people. So I'm going to say no, that's not true. But it is a myth, and it also keeps people from not applying for college. And I would encourage anybody, criminal charges or not, to apply for college, especially now that the Pell Grant is back. So I would encourage you to do that. Here's another one about the employer. Oh, yes, Lena, go ahead.
And also Mass Rehab was given $1 million specifically for individuals with substance use disorders to seek out.
Cool. All right. Well, we are moving fast, man. This could be an all-day one right here. Kelly, come to bring us back. But I want to hit you guys real quick with this employer question. How can employers approach a staff member who they feel may be experiencing SUD? Wow. I'm not going to start with you guys. You guys go ahead before I get, wow, let's go. Anybody? Kelly, you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, I think here's a great way that we can maybe focus more on upstream too, in making sure that we are creating recovery-friendly workplaces so that people can feel empowered to ask for flex time or to ask for that leave of going to detox or residential treatment, knowing that their job is still protected. And this can be done by hanging up signs, by printing out fact sheets, because that way you're inviting the conversation for them instead of approaching. But I think if supervisors do feel like they need to ask that question, always with compassion and care, with what can I do to help you? How can I restructure this job? And what can I do to support your recovery?
Right. And I think that's key because, at the end of the day, we're talking about humans and human beings, right? And people struggle. I always get a question for people say to me, well, Daryl, we love to hire peers, but what happens if they relapse? I'm like, what happens if a person has a heart attack? What if a person slips? Like, we're human beings. Everybody, that can't be the solace of if you hire somebody. That shouldn't be. We're not different people. We've had some challenges, and here we are today, striving to be, better people and be part of. So we, can't let those things like that be a hindrance. So it's interesting, that question about, that. But I think that, and I'll just say personally, in some situations, I wish my employer did come to me and say, you know what, I'm noticing some things, and is there a way that we can support you, more so than me ended up like many times getting fired because of my behavior, because I went too far. And I'm sure people had noticed the change, because when we put a substance in our body, there's a change, right? You can tell when we know family members, we can tell when you see me today, if you see me a different way tomorrow, you might be like, I wonder what's going on, instead of waiting until it gets too far, right? So yeah, we're moving forward. I'm just checking my time. I got all these different devices going. I just want to say, anybody have any last words? Kelly, I want to say, man, I have to say this again. The information that you gave us in the toolkit today was huge, because the things I didn't know about the employer, and I think, I don't like to say it gives us ammunition, but it does give you so much support that you can stand on. I don't know if Tim and Lena want to chime in on, did you learn something extra when we were going through it that you could now use? Because the employer thing about searching for recovery housing, that's usually stuff that's done in the dark, or I got to take a day off. But now you're saying that, there might be an avenue that you can actually take to go search for recovery housing and not feel like you're going to lose your job or something. You guys want to say any last words? We've got a couple of minutes. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I think the recovery piece is really important. We all know that being employed in recovery is, there's a direct correlate to having successful recovery, right? So I think the more employers are educated and are aware and willing to hire people in recovery, and I don't think it should be seen as a risk to hire somebody in recovery. As Daryl said, other people with physical health conditions run into times where they have to leave their jobs as well. And it is nice, although it's not as streamlined as and easy for people in real life scenarios, the fear of leaving their job, but we are protected, you know, as far as the legal system goes with getting let go or fired because of implications due to our recovery
Right.
or relapse for that matter. And I think it goes hand in hand with housing too. So like, right, being employed and housing are just direct correlates to successful recovery. And that's been well documented, and there's data around that. And I think, you know, landlords and employers, just the more they're educated and the more they're willing to accept us as community members, it will just make it for a better system overall.
Couple minutes, Lena, you got anything?
I was just thinking to myself, how can I get that RIZE toolkit to every community, everyone?
Right.
It's so unbelievable how specific it gets. So, you know, if it's like education and you want to, in recovery, you just click on that and there's all those details. It's just so well, unbelievable. And then to have a 24/7 hotline that you can call for help, I think is like, it blows me away.
No, I think this thing might be national, man. I think that this thing should be used everywhere because we don't have those resources, and people, not only being a person that in addiction is in the dark, but the family's in the dark as well. And you know, we do recover, man. We make things happen, man. You know, when you want to see somebody not only survive and thrive, man. We're thriving, man, not just surviving, thriving. You want to see a beautiful thing, help a person get to their place in recovery. Kelly, what you got, man? We're about to wrap this thing up, man. I could go all day. You know,
I would just say that it took a village to get this toolkit off the ground. And I'm looking through the participant list here and I'm seeing lots of familiar names. So I really just want to thank everyone who provided input, copy edits, feedback, resources. It really took a bunch of different people coming together, and it will take all of us too to make sure that this gets to all the right places and sectors, because it's not just folks in this room who need this information. It really is the more people who know about these tools, the more we can better support people in treatment and recovery to advocate and protect their rights. So thank you.
No, thank you. I want to thank you all, man. This was awesome, man. We got to pass to Julie now. Julie, take us home. How you doing? Where we at?
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, Kelly. Great job. And thank you, Lena and Tim, for sharing, you know, your thoughts and strategies and feedback on what we're doing here. As Kelly said, it definitely took a village to get this thing done. And we really did approach it from a sense of co-creation. So we wanted as many voices and as much input as possible. We also consider it to be not final. We don't think it will ever be final, and we want to keep updating it. So I saw some chats where people were providing some additional resources, and I hope you'll keep that up. You can always reach us at info@rizema.org, or you can feel free to reach out to me directly. And I want to thank everybody. Please let us know how we can improve upon this. Please share it with your networks. So that we can have as much distribution as possible. And as Daryl said, maybe we're RIZE Massachusetts now, but we'll be RIZE Global later. So again, thank you all so much for joining us today. And I hope you enjoy at least the beautiful weather we're having here in Massachusetts. So thank you.